Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Bree. Today's reading vlog, we're going to be doing a Frankenstein retelling video. To give you a brief history, I read Frankenstein back when I was in college and I fell in love with it. I read it for like a science fiction class and I loved exploring how it was kind of a modern science fiction for its time. Like even though the science fiction genre wouldn't be traditionally created until much later, this was kind of the science fiction of its era, and I just remember reading it and really falling in love with it. And so I've always wanted to read some more Frankenstein retellings, and there's not a ton out there, but I had originally picked up The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kirsten White because I had seen this read. I think I saw someone else read it. I think it was Kayla from Books and Lala read it, and I immediately saw it and wanted to pick it up because I was like, I need to read a Frankenstein retelling. So this one, we're following Frankenstein, I believe, from his wife's perspective, and we're getting her story, what goes on for her during this whole time. And so I'm really excited to see this, what it does. It's a YA horror, and I'm really excited to see like how I'm going to enjoy YA horror. So I really wanted to read this, and I really wanted to read it for a Frankenstein retelling video. So I was looking up books that are Frankenstein retellings, and I found these two, and I'm very excited to get to them. I'm really excited to get to both of them because I think both of them sound really good. So we have Our Hideous Progyny by C.E. McGill, and this is following Mary, and she is a descendant of Frankenstein, and I believe her and her husband are working to recreate the monster that her uncle had made, her great uncle had made. And I know that this is also a sapphic story, and I think it's exploring Mary's sexuality, and it says it's a queer feminist inspired masterpiece. So I'm really interested to see how this goes. It's a gothic story as well, so I'm really gonna like it. I'm just excited to see what they do with this story, and I can't wait to read it. That's the second one that like I had seen and I wanted to pick up and caught my eye for this video. And then I decided I wanted one more, so I picked up Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Saadawi. And this one I think is going to be so interesting. It's translated from Arabic, and we're following a character, I think his name is Hadi, and he collects human body parts, and this is during the U.S. occupation of Baghdad, and we're following him as he's picking up these body parts and he puts them together to create a human. And I think one day that corpse like just gets up and walks away and starts wreaking havoc all over the city. And so I think it's going to be a very poignant horror novel about war, and like it says specifically seeing these body parts as people and giving them a proper burial. And so I think we're going to have a lot of like conversations about who we value as humans and stuff like that. And so I'm really interested to see how this goes, and I had never heard of it before doing this research, but it sounds like a book I would really enjoy. So I'm excited to get to it. I think it's going to be a tough one, but I think it's going to be adding a lot to this Frankenstein conversation and just in general. So there you go. Those are the three books I'm going to try to read for this Frankenstein reading vlog. I'm very excited for it, and I will just check in with you when I've started them. But I hope this goes really well because, like I said, love Frankenstein, so I'm very excited to see how the retellings go. So this morning I went to pick up the Frankenstein in Baghdad from the library, and while I was there I picked up a package that I had ordered from Pango, and then I also have a book from the library that I found in their little like library sale area that you can buy for $1. So I picked some books up, so I thought I'd give you like a mini haul. So the one I picked up from the library for $1 was The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. I have not read this. I know it came out in 2021, and it's been one that I've been trying so hard not to spoil for myself because everyone says you need to kind of know nothing going in and just know that it's going to be kind of confusing until the end, and I've heard the twists are crazy. So I've been really trying not to spoil myself, but every time I've seen it somewhere, I just never picked it up, and I don't know why I never picked up from the library either. It just was like never the right time, and I would always buy like a different book ahead of it because I'm interested but not 100%. But now I saw it for $1 and I thought I'm gonna take it, bring it home so that I can read it and not get spoiled for it, because I do think that it's one I'm either gonna love or not. Like it's a very divisive book, so I'm really interested to see how I feel about it, and for $1 I'm willing to risk hating it. But I have a Sundial on my TBR as well by Catriona Ward, and I haven't read it yet, but I think this is the one I'm most intrigued about, and this is like her best work that I think most people view as like her best, so I really want to try it. So I picked it up because I saw it there, and usually they don't really always have like books I'm interested in. They have a lot of older titles because it's just whatever people donate. So I was really happy to see something there. And then this is from Pango. I have had this in my cart for a really long time, but just never checked it out because I didn't have like I didn't have Pango bucks like when you sell it. I usually use the money from that to buy it, and I didn't have any. So, but I finally decided I really wanted it, so I did. And that is Deathless by Catherine M. Valente. It was like $4, so I kind of figured it wasn't going to be like in the best condition, but outside of just like yellowing pages, it's in pretty good condition. And I've read Comfort Me with Apples by her, really loved it. I've read the Fairyland books. It's got a really long title. The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making, that one. And I really liked it. So I wanted to try this, and it's supposed to be about like Russian folklore, but I think it has to do a lot with like war and death. And I don't know. I just wanted to read her whole backlist because I haven't disliked anything of hers, and it sounds really good. And I just think she has such a way of writing that is, in her middle grade, very whimsical, and then in her like horror, it was very descriptive and like whimsical in a way, even though it's not. So I don't know what to expect from this because I think it's definitely going to be a darker story, but I'm really excited to give it a try. Now that I have it, I will. It's very hard to find too. It's not a like well-known one, but it's got historical kind of like maybe a sprinkle of horror with the war and stuff, which is definitely my vibe. So glad I picked that up. Those are the $2 that I got. And then let's talk about our hideous progyny. I am now 57 pages in, and I'm enjoying it. It's got this interesting like dual timeline thing going, which I wasn't expecting. So we're following Mary as she is first with her husband, and his father has passed, so they're going to the estate of his late father and seeing his sister, and she has only ever heard of his family but never met them. So he said really negative things about his family, and she is now like getting to meet them. So she's like kind of weary of what's going to happen there. But you also know that they have gone through a trauma before, and I do want to give a trigger warning for child death, and that is something that she is going through and mourning. And so you're seeing like how that has affected their relationship, and they're just like not in a good place like financially either. So they're dealing with like a lot of hardships when they go to the house, and they're dealing with inheritance, and that gets messy. So then we're following her with her childhood friend Catherine, and just how she like made friends with Catherine and how she wasn't really friends with a lot of kids her age, but then found like comfort in Catherine and her family. And then where I'm at, we're dealing with her like knowing that her friendship is going to be over, but it says that she somehow ruins it, and we don't know what happened. And that's all I am at so far. Right now, I think it's setting up intrigue pretty well, and we're getting to know Mary a lot and her like backstory, but also like her relationship with her husband and how rocky it is. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. We also know that he really dislikes his sister, and we're seeing his sister, and it's kind of like coming into conflict with like who his sister seems to be according to Mary and who he's described his sister as. And so it's like, is his sister really the way that he's described her? So I think that that's all very interesting. It takes place at like a gothic manor. It's kind of like in disarray a little bit. And so far I'm intrigued to find out more. And I don't really have like any real like conclusive thoughts just to tell you like that's where the story is going so far. But I definitely will continue. And I have been listening partly on audio. And I do think that the audiobook narrator is pretty good. Like it does have this like gothic feel, like the way that the narrator talks, it feels very like old and Victorian-esque, which I don't think this, I always say Victorian, but I don't think it is. Maybe it's 1850s. So yeah, I'm interested. Her husband is also a like scientist, and he is like trying to work on things, but is recently been like let go from his position. And then she also kind of helps him with that. Like she like does the drawings and catalogs stuff and writes it down for him and all that. So she's also like somewhat of a scientist, but obviously is like not very recognized in this times. So I'm interested to see like how she maybe comes to the forefront in terms of the science portion of this, and what her contributions are going to be, because I do have a feeling we're going to be looking at that a lot as well, and potentially seeing her in more of the scientist role than her husband. So yeah, enjoying, and I will continue and update when I have like actual thoughts outside of the plot of this. I just was like going through this package to get rid of it, and I realized there was a little note in here. So I won't show, well, she put her handle, so I think that's fine. So she has a little shop called Have a Crup Cake with a K. Really cute. But there was 2 little stickers in it, and they're so cute. Can it focus, please? Isn't that adorable? And then I like this one too. The book was better. So yeah, that's just so cute. I'm like really shocked that she put little stickers in there too. If you like her shop, it's from the Library of Have a Crep Cake. That's cute. Had to share. Okay, I'm gonna go now.
I saw the ending before the movie was done. I got thick skin because I've been burned before. I got baggage that you don't know of. Learn the hard way not to trust anyone. I'm not letting anyone get too close. I'm a wild one. I'm alright, love of mine.
Apologies in advance if you can hear the cat's water bowl fountain. Pippi is currently using it, so I can't turn it off because he loves his fountain. So we're just going to have to go with it. But I wanted to update because I got to about the 50% mark. Okay, so I'm on chapter 15, page 187. So probably just over halfway or just about halfway. I will say, so there is around the 100-page mark, I want to say, we get a part 2 where I feel like more of the Frankenstein story is evolving. But that being said, I feel like for the amount of pages we're in, I want the plot of the Frankenstein to be a little more prevalent, and we're starting to see it, but it just feels a little slow. And granted, like, I'm going through a lot of things personally, and so I feel like listening and reading, I haven't been paying attention quite as much. So I don't know if it's just feeling slow because of that, or because it's also a gothic book, so maybe like this wasn't the best book to read right now. I don't know, because usually I really like this kind of story, and I would say like while I'm actually reading, I'm enjoying it, but it just feels like it's taken a long time to get to where we are. It reminds me a lot of the Midnight Bargain in the same like tone, where you're just kind of going with someone through society, and this is like science based, so you're also getting a lot of like science information and about this woman's like dealing with, one, her queerness, but two, her like place in society as a woman is like a lot of the book as well. And usually I like those kind of conversations, and I don't think that the conversations are bad in here. I just think maybe at this time right now it's a little slow for me. I just feel like it's having the conversation it wants to have about specifically feminism. I feel like Mary's own queerness is not explored like quite as much yet, and I don't know if that's going to come up more later. I don't think that is as explored, if that's like what you would go into the book looking for. So far we haven't got like too much of that. And there's still a lot of things that I feel like I have questions about that have been touched upon that I'm interested to see how they wrap up. I'm curious just like how much can be wrapped up in this bit, and if it's going to feel like the pace changes a lot and just gets like really fast paced to finish out everything. I'm unsure. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I will see you later when I have more update and finish the book and can tell you final thoughts. Hello, I am waiting for my mom and sister because we're gonna go get our toenails done, which I'm really excited because I can't get my nails done for work because I work with food, like in food manufacturing, so I never get them done, but I'm gonna get my toes done and I'm really excited for it. And now it's like sandal weather, so it's great. But I wanted to update because I did finish Our Hideous Progyny by C.E. McGill, and I've been struggling because I finished this like early yesterday and I just don't know what to rate this, so I think I'm not going to. The reason I had originally stopped reading books was because I felt really conflicted about my ratings. And so far, the past couple months, I've been reading them again. And I kind of just want to essentially rate them when I know how I feel about a book. And this one, I just don't know how I feel about it. Partly, it's that sorry, people are in the parking lot, and this always makes me very nervous. Partly, it's that I have been going through like a lot personally. And so I don't know if I was in the right headspace for it. It felt very... What is this red? I'm sorry, I'm a mess right now. It felt very slow, but usually I like a slow gothic story, but something about this was just like a little slow. But the pacing in the second half, I think, was better, and we got more into like the meat of the story and like the more of the Frankenstein retelling. And I enjoyed that. And I think in the last clip I said that I feel like the queer storyline, like Mary discovering her queerness and like understanding it more, and like that storyline didn't feel as big to me. And I think that really changed in the second half. In the second half, we explored that a lot more. And I really like how that was like explored. It was a very gentle way of exploring it. And I just thought it was really good. And I enjoyed the way it ended and how it like worked with this time period and stuff. And so, yeah, I really liked that. And the Frankenstein stuff I enjoyed. Now, I don't know. My mom and sister just pulled in. I don't know if it was supposed to be horror, but like it didn't really go there in terms of horror. And so I don't know if this is just like historical fiction, like sci-fi, and that would make more sense. So I think also expectations for me going in. Overall, like I enjoyed it. I think the writing was really good. The characters were good. Like Mary as a character was a really big, real character to me. But I just don't know in the end exactly what my rating would be. So those are my thoughts. I think if you like Frankenstein type stuff, I think that this was a good one that like elaborates on Frankenstein, but I don't think it's as dark or creepy as you might want it to be. I think for like a lot of the dark things they're doing, it didn't feel that way narratively, if that makes sense. So I finished that, and I will be moving on to The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, I believe. And this is a YA, like from the view of Elizabeth Frankenstein, who is Victor Frankenstein's wife. So I'm excited to see how this one goes, and I will give you thoughts in a little bit. But right now I'm going to go in and get my nails done. Hello. So I'm currently 85 pages into The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, and so far I'm liking it. I think in terms of Frankenstein horror, this is leaning more in the horror realm than the Frankenstein retelling that I just read, Our Hideous Progyny. I thought that one was going to be more horror, and to me that read just more like of a gothic fiction story, where this reads more of a gothic horror, which I think I was having a hard time talking about like what I meant when I was talking about that one being gothic but not horror. And this is just a good example of the difference. This one has a lot of gross imagery, like there's animal harm and things like that, and like just overall a more sinister vibe, which I think is coming from the horror, less the gothic. The gothic, to me, in both of these is just the overall atmosphere feels dark and dreary, and we're dealing with this topic of creating life from nothing or bringing someone or something back from the dead. So to me, that's what makes it gothic, is the exploration of these darker themes, whereas this is leaning into the horror of it all as well. And I think this is interesting because I think originally I had also said that I think this was following his wife, but really we're following Elizabeth as she's taken from this home that was very abusive and brought to the Frankensteins to be like a friend, companion for Victor. And so we're watching her like make all these decisions where she's kind of like a not a likable character because she has so many masks to her, but you really see why, because she was brought in as this friend for Victor. She really has to mold herself into the image Victor wants to see. And if you don't know, Victor Frankenstein is the scientist who makes the monster. And so he is clearly got some things going on. He's a disturbed kind of character. And so we're seeing Elizabeth as she's trying to make sure she doesn't lose this position in the house. So she always is like fitting whatever Victor needs, which means she excuses like a lot of his bad behavior. And we're flipping between timelines. So we're following her as she's going to find Victor because he has been gone at school and she has not been able to speak to him in some months. So she's trying to go find him with Justine, who is another housemaid there. And then we're also getting these snippets of her remembering the past and growing up with Victor and like how he got to where he is now. So far it's moving at a very quick pace too, because we kind of are dropped into the story like right in the action almost of her trying to find Victor. It's not a slow book, but I think the flashbacks add a lot to the story, to understanding her and Victor, and it doesn't feel like it's slowing it down at all. So right now I'm really enjoying the pace of it, and I'm enjoying the darkness of it. I think when I read Our Hideous Progeny, like I wanted it to be darker, and so far this is giving me darker, though I think it might go maybe darker than I would like, I don't know. But so far I'm enjoying it, and I just am really interested to follow Mary, because I don't think she's a very likable character, but you also like understand why she is the way she is. And so I'm really interested to see like how she reshapes this story of Frankenstein from the original, and how like what Kirsten White is gonna do to expand on the original story. So yeah, I'm going to read more and I'll let you know, but I'm 85 pages in and it's only 280 pages, so it's not a very long book either, so I should be able to get through it pretty quickly, I hope, and I will let you know more thoughts when I have them. Hello, it's the next day. I wanted to update because I only have 80 more pages left, so I'm really close to the end. And I will say I'm really enjoying this. I think that, for one, this is much closer to a retelling, like a true retelling instead of like a reimagining, where I feel like Our Hideous Progeny was more like a reimagining of Frankenstein, or a like continuation of Frankenstein, where this feels like it's a true retelling where it adds more to the story. You're just getting like different perspectives and more context in the background of what the Frankenstein story was. So in some ways it reminds me of like What Moves the Dead by T.K. Fisher, which was a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher. So it like follows the story pretty closely but adds its own things to it. It feels like that's what this is doing. I really like it. I think things still have been surprising. I think some things you can see coming, but even if you know the full story, I feel like the way that you get to those events still makes the story feel surprising and still feel fresh. So I'm really, really enjoying it. I think Mary as a main character, not Mary, Elizabeth. Mary was the character in Our Hideous Progeny. I was like, where did I get that? Elizabeth feels like a very like complex and interesting character because of the way she's been raised and what she has to do. Her viewpoint is just so interesting because of her attachment to Victor, and like you see why, but you also see like how flawed he is and like how dangerous he is. And so it's just really a really interesting dynamic. This last section, so there's also parts to this. Once I hit part 3, which was like only a little bit ago, yeah, part 3 was only like 10 pages before that, the main part of the conflict is now coming to a head. Like the action has really ramped up, but the pacing throughout the whole thing as well has been really good and fits, one, the Frankenstein, like I said, but also just fits the story in general. It has kind of a quick start, but it never felt slow to me throughout this whole thing, but it never felt like it was going too quick where events were just happening too quickly. I feel like everything feels well paced. So far, really enjoying it. I will let you know final rating and thoughts at the end, but this has definitely been a win, and I'm excited because I haven't read a YA horror in a long time, and so to have one that's really working for me is great, but also just doing this vlog where I get to read Frankenstein retellings is really fun because like I said, I love Frankenstein, so this has been really great. Anyway, I'm gonna go. I'll let you know when I have final thoughts. So I finished The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, and I think I'm gonna go with 4 stars. I can't really tell you why it doesn't feel like a 5-star. It just doesn't have that 5-star feeling. But overall, it was really good. I think that for such a short amount of book, this packs so much into it, and I really liked the addition on the end and how everything came together. And I liked seeing Elizabeth's character arc from beginning to end and how she has to deal with these revelations she's having and the way she has to navigate the Frankenstein family and her position in it. Because of everything that's going down, she really has to rely on her abilities. And I also appreciated that she wasn't the most likable main character. She does a lot of things that are manipulative. She like kind of lies and changes her personality to get her way, and I just think that's very indicative of like how she had to endure. And so you see why, and even though she's not likable, I enjoyed following her and learning about her and seeing her with other people and how they interact. I think this is the kind of horror story that really works for me, and I liked the take on the monster and how that all works out. Overall, I really, really liked it. I'm really glad I finally picked it up because I've been putting it off for forever, and it ended up being a really good book, and I like that I'm going to have a YA horror to recommend. So I don't have too much more to add other than it was a 4-star. I really enjoyed it and I would recommend it, especially if you want to get into horror. Maybe this was a little dark, so I don't know if I'd recommend it as a YA horror to get into, to ease yourself into, because I actually think this was darker than some other horror books I've read. It really goes there in terms of like the gore, and that just doesn't ease up because you get to see some some things happening. But overall, really enjoyed it. I think the messaging was on par with Frankenstein while adding its new things to it. I just really liked how it ended. Now, I will say, the ending could upset people because there's an ending and then there's an epilogue, and I think that some people are going to love the epilogue and some people are going to hate it. And so I feel fine about the ending. I think maybe that might be one of the reasons why it's not a full 5-star, because I don't know if I needed the epilogue. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on the ending, and I just can see that it might be a divisive ending. So if you like the ending, I don't know if you're gonna like the epilogue. So go at your own risk. But yeah, I would definitely read more from Kirsten White. I know she wrote Hide, and that has gotten really mixed reviews, so I don't know. But I really liked this one. This one was a win for me. So that's the second book down for the vlog. And now I'm going to pick up Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Sadawi, and this will be the last one I read, and I am excited to get into this. I think this is going to be similar in vein to the Our Hideous Progeny, because it's going to be more of like a reimagining, rewriting of Frankenstein, not a like strict retelling, but I'm really excited to get to it. I think that it sounds like it's going to be a dark kind of, it says humorous too, so like I think that dark humor is gonna really work for me, so I'm interested to see how this goes. I haven't seen no one really I know read it, so I have really no expectations for it, which is great. Sorry for this horrible lighting. It's a weird, like, kind of rainy, kind of sunny day out, but I did want to update because I made it to about 80 pages, and I have these little marks so I can try to check in. So this is different than I guess I thought it was going to be. So I thought we were going to focus more on like a Frankenstein like body, and so far we're just getting different perspectives of different people. So we had like one from this old woman who lost her son like 20 years ago, but she believes him to be still alive. Then we got a perspective of a journalist who's like trying to move up the ranks. Then we got a guy who was killed in a bombing. Well, and then at one point it doesn't like give him a chapter per se, I don't think, but it's talking about the guy Hadi who like makes the body. You get like some perspectives from him, so it's kind of interesting because at first it was like following one character, and then it started just mid-chapter like changing perspectives. So the only thing I have to say so far is that I think the amount of like character perspectives we're going back and forth in is a little confusing. It's written in third person, so you're not like in their head, which makes it easier, I think, to follow, but it just still is like a lot to jump back and forth, and I'm not really sure like how they're all connecting, except for the like junk guy, like he scavenges for things and sells them. He who like makes the body, like I understand how he is related, but yeah, I don't really have a lot of thoughts. It's different than what I thought, but I'm still enjoying it. So I think I'm going to listen to the audiobook on Spotify and try to get to my next tab, and then I'll check in once I've got there. So I have about 80 pages to get to the end. So I think I'm going to finish this today. I've been listening on the audiobook on Spotify, which I couldn't find this audiobook everywhere, and then last minute I decided to look on Spotify, and I was really surprised, but they did have it. I did not check in since like the first little bit, and I had the tabs to check in. But the thing about this book is that there is a lot of conversation happening about people's bodies and how we a lot of times view people as other, especially in war. And when Baghdad was occupied by the US, like this idea of us versus them and viewing them as less than human, I know that that is a conversation that is had a lot of times, especially with people of color, and being viewed as like not human. And so like those conversations, I think that it is having them, but there's all these other things like sprinkled in that make it really hard to like keep on the plot of it. So we're getting like many different perspectives. There's a journalist and we're like following him and his like he's a protege to like this other guy. The other guy's like really confusing, and we're getting a lot of political maneuverings, different people that this guy's connected to, and how some people are for like one side of the argument and other people are for the other side, and he kind of is like playing all these people. But it doesn't really like make a lot of sense. Like I feel like partly this wasn't written for like a US audience. This was written for people in Iraq, and like it was in Arabic originally. Like this was not necessarily written to be translated into English. So I think that it doesn't have to explain itself and explain who these people are and how they're all connected. It doesn't have to dive into the politics, because like if you're from that area, you know it. But as someone who is not from that area and has a very like US centered knowledge of what happened in Iraq because of the media and things like that, like I don't really have a great knowledge of the history and what went down, and like specifically people and how they play different roles. So I think it makes it really confusing, and that is not the story's fault either, because like again, it's not for me as a reader. I just find it really confusing. And then we're like getting perspectives of the old woman, we're getting perspectives of the body that is become this like entity that goes around and kind of deals justice. There's a lot of talk about like justice as well, and like who's a criminal and like who's innocent, and how do you decide, and are we all kind of both? Can we be both criminal and innocent, and blurring those lines? And so I think that my favorite part probably was when we got to be more in the body's head than anything else. But I think overall it's just losing me a little bit. There's a lot of like inserts of things I don't fully like understand why they're related. Perspectives from people that work in like the government and stuff, and I'm just like a little lost. So I don't know. I'm feeling okay about it. I think in the end it would be like a 3-star, but I probably won't end up rating it just because I think a lot of it has to do with like who the audience is for, and I'm just like not that target audience. So that being said, I'm gonna finish it and then I'll give you any final thoughts. Okay, well, I finished Frankenstein in Baghdad, and I don't really have any other thoughts. I think that the ending didn't really change much about what I just said in the last clip. It read pretty quickly. I just think that it lost me a bit, and so I don't think that I'm officially going to rate this, which is unfortunate because now I have 2 books in the vlog that I'm not going to rate. These 2. I actually do think, because some time has passed since this one, that I'm going to go with like 4-star. I think that there were things I liked, and traditionally I've liked this kind of book. I think partly it was my headspace. So I think I'm going to go with a 4 on this one. I do really like it, and I do think if you're someone who wants a Frankenstein retelling but doesn't like full horror, this is a good one to try. And then this one I'm just not going to rate. Like I said, I'm not the target audience for this, and I think that other readers are going to get a lot out of this. I don't want to dissuade you from reading it. I don't think it was a bad book. I think that there were things it definitely wanted to talk about, and it did talk about them. It's just there was a lot of confusion for me narratively and how it was structured. It was also, I never mentioned that it was broken up into chapters, but then each chapter had its own like chapter within it. So there would be like 5 or 6 parts, and we'd change perspectives a lot. We would jump time and places and who we were following, all that kind of stuff. So I think just narratively, like the way it was structured also made it confusing for me. So it just wasn't like the best read for me, but I think that its discussions were interesting to read, and I took away a lot from that discussion side of it. So that's Frankenstein in Baghdad. Pippi's trying to open up the cabinet. And then the final book, turn it around, is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, which I really did like, and I had a good time with it, and I'm just excited to have read a bunch of Frankenstein books. If you have any Frankenstein retelling recommendations, please leave them down below. I'd love to do another part to this someday, read more, because I do really like Frankenstein retellings. If you've made it to the end of the vlog, put a like medical type emoji. since, you know, we're dealing with science. A science or a medical emoji down below. Also, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.